Daddy was alone, and he said he'd preferred it that way. The first memory I got is just him and me. Women were trouble, he said. I looked up from my chores with a horrified face, and he chuckled. Not you, honey, not you. I took pride in that. I was different. So was he. We were special. I suppose that's what made it so easy for me. He'd give me my chores, and I'd follow the rules, and everyone was happy. Well, the two of us were happy. The rest didn't matter. When I turned 16, he told me it was time for me to learn the pillars. He said someday I'd teach them to my own sons. I didn't correct him. I suppose I should have. Daddy was just old. His mind started slipping. Daddy knew. He'd always known. Pillar 1 is protection. You have to protect what you've built. He taught me how to dispose, the properties of different solvents, and which ones could break down flesh. 7 weeks into learning the pillars, he woke me up and told me that John's gal had been poking around in his truck bed and had found one of the women. It was time to test my understanding. I hung back as he knocked on the front door and hit John with a shovel. Knocked him clean out, and Daddy laughed until he coughed up the red mud. I wondered why he had the mud too if we were special, but I had to bury that thought quick when the gal came barreling out of the door. Pillar 2 is readiness. I pulled my gun and aimed at her ankles. Miss, hit. She wailed and hit the ground screaming. She asked why. She begged us to stop. Even as I wrapped the gag around her mouth, she asked me to let her go. I knew better than to meet her eyes. He'd taught me that one too. Don't engage them. We're different. We tossed both John and his gal in the bed of the truck, rolled the tarp over, and I tied it down. Daddy stood with his right arm on the bed, bent over. I heard him spit. "You're gonna have to drive, son," he said. I wondered if he'd forgotten that I wasn't a son, but he knew. He'd always known. I helped him to the passenger side and hopped behind the wheel. Daddy fell asleep. He stayed that way. I'd seen them do that too, but we weren't them. We were special. As more mud leaked from his mouth, my head filled up with questions. Daddy was gone, which made me think that maybe we weren't all that special. He was leaking just like they did. I heard them in the back of the truck, rolling around and trying to get out. They were crying and struggling, and soon I was crying too. And I wondered if it felt the same way in their hearts when they cried. Daddy said it never felt at all, that it was a trick to beat us. But I knew deep down that it did. I knew that they hurt. I knew that something was wrong with what we were, if we even were. The third and final pillar is pride. It is the pleasure we're supposed to take in the art of the cleanse. I'd been with Daddy for this part. I'd take them out of the truck and rack them. I'd make the cuts while they were still breathing, and collected the mud to fertilize the gardens. Whistle while I worked. Good cuts to the freezer, the rest in the lake out back. That worked when we were special. When I didn't know better. When I didn't question. But the thing is, with them crying in the back and Daddy leaking mud, the core of me was broke. I turned the truck around, drove into town, and stopped at the little sheriff's station. Hopped out, honked the horn a few times, and walked away. I figured I'd spent all this time thinking I was special. It was time to learn how to be human.